Good evening, everybody. Welcome to First Church, Religious Science here in New York City. I know some of you will be watching on YouTube and Facebook, so if you're watching later in the week, I would like to invite you to join our Zoom call. So send us a message and we'll send you an invitation. As Jimmy was doing his opening, I was thinking, I've been presenting this material for a very long time. I recall, I think it was in 1988, at a group that I was facilitating on Louise Hay, her book, You Can Heal Your Life. There'd be probably 25, 35 people in the room, and we would share about one of the themes that are in the book, You Can Heal Your Life. And in those early groups, I had to set up the ground rules because everybody would have a different idea about healing. And what we're there to really, we were there teaching people what we now call new thought. And we're teaching people about the power that they have to heal and change their life. So it was a wonderful experience for me at the time because I had never thought I was going to do it. I just got talked into running that group, and little did I know all these years later I would be in the place where Louise herself started. Because of the book You Can Heal Your Life, many lives have changed. Upwards of 65 million people bought the book, and it's estimated that over 100 million people have been helped by her information. You Can Heal Your Life is Louise Hay's approach to our teaching. We have a textbook, we have a founder, Ernest Holmes. So Louise put her own interpretation on what we call new thought in that simple book. I think her book is probably one of the best things that's ever been put out because she was able to take some fairly sophisticated ideas that, in coursework that I've had to study and present them for everybody. And you don't have to be Einstein to practice this teaching. You just simply need to have the desire for change and the desire to do the work, because you certainly have the power. And I will say that again, you have the power. Many of us were raised thinking the power itself was outside of us. We used to think, I can't speak for all of you, but I'll say for most of us, we would think that the power was above. Generally, it was male, and it was so whatever notion that the vast majority of us had would be of a figurehead above. And so we come into a group like this, a gathering like this, and we encounter Louise Hay's words in her book. She truthfully was a new thought student. She understood that there was one energy, one power, and that power was within herself. And as Ernest Holmes would say, there's power for good in the universe, and you can use it. So what he and she were both saying is, you have this power, and you're using this power. Sometimes we're not using it very constructively. Sometimes our thoughts and thinking is negative. And when we're using this tremendous power we have negatively, it's too bad. That's all I can say. If I'm caught up in negative thinking, or what we used to call stinking thinking in many of the 12-step programs, that's going to have it. What I'm trying to say is that type of thinking, that train of causation, is going to produce an effect, cause and effect. So to the extent I'm negative and I'm always going to worst case scenarios and ain't it awful and poor me, and I'm doing the negatives, they're going to show up in my life without a doubt. On the other side of the coin, if I can learn how to love myself enough to change that conversation around, if I can learn how to elevate my thinking and hitch my wagon to the stars, that's Emerson's expression. If I can lift it up, if I can level up, if I can just stay out of the muck of the negativity, you know, if I can learn to love myself in that way, to monitor my words, my thoughts, and all, I'll start to have a profound change in my life. The only person that we can change is ourselves, and we can change ourselves. So we work with our thoughts, and we work with our feelings, and we have tremendous power in us that operates through us all the time. So I've got a lesson here. This was one of Louise, one of the lessons she had herself. I'm going to touch base on some of it with you. Louise had one lesson on the 10 rules. But today, I think I'm going to skip through them and go to about being mindful. This wasn't a talk, it was a workshop, was about building on a new consciousness. And Louise said, the answers are within me, and they come to me easily. I've oftentimes said to this group, from one of my teachers, Bill Tolliver, who used to say, there is that which is within you that knows. Because when I was in ministerial class, the first year class had a lot of people, and he would ask a lot of people. He asked questions, and then we'd all like duck because we didn't want to be called on, and we would say I don't know. And I remember him saying, there is that which is within you that knows. And so he wouldn't let us get away with saying I don't know, because he said there is that which is within all of us that knows. So that kind of goes along with what we're dealing with in the Hay class. We're really learning to love ourselves enough to trust ourselves and to know that we're one with the one and that we have the answers and that it's an inside job. So we inquire within. We learn to meditate. We learn to affirmatively pray. And we learn that we're supplied and supported, and we have the power that we need to move mountains, to heal what we need to heal, to become prosperous, to be whole. So Louise, in that particular workshop, said, the answers come to me with ease, with joy. And then there's a list of negatives she went over in that particular group. So I'm going to give you the negatives before I give you the positives. I don't want to be this way. I don't want to be fat. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be old, God forbid. I don't want to live here, and I don't want to live there, and I don't want this kind of relationship, and I certainly don't want to be like my father, or I don't want to be like my mother either, for that matter. And I don't want to be stuck in any kind of old job. And then she went on, then we do the physical stuff, right? And I don't want to have this body or this nose or, whatever it is that people are being critical of themselves over. And I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be unhappy, and I don't want to be sick. So what she said after going through all the negatives is, she says, I want you to understand something. What you pay attention to and what you put your attention on grows. So if you're somebody's always focusing about what you don't want, without realizing it, you're going to be drawing that stuff to you. So that's just a little bit of a pull-up for everybody. What you put your attention on manifests. So please don't be thinking in terms of worst-case scenarios all the time. And I know some people do that. I used to do it myself. I think, well, what's the worst that can happen here? And I'd be thinking about the worst thing. That's like working it backwards. It's better to think in terms of holistic ideas, like, just find a way to think of it in taking the positive approach. So Louise said we take the positive approach, but it takes more than just having positive thoughts. We need to do more than simply affirm. We need to get to a place where we sense something, where we feel it, and where we know the truth of our own affirmations. A couple weeks ago, I introduced a new word. I forgot who I got it from now. Conviction. So we want to have our affirmations be powerful. So we want to embody them. We want to feel them. The power in treatment is when you have the feeling, and we want to have the conviction. So when we put our attention in such a way where we affirm and we know and we sense and we feel, it's going to be a much more powerful process. We need to get to a place, she said, where we sense, feel, and know the truth of what we are saying, of our affirmations. If we're getting all caught up in what's wrong or what's missing, we're not going to, you won't get what you want. See, if your thinking is going towards worst case scenarios and what people are doing or what they've done to you, and you're holding grudges or any and all of that, any negativity, it's not going to bring you what you want. We will not get what you want from that. Or excuse me, you will not get what you want from that. So for any people out there who find yourself thinking about what you don't want, the word I want to give you is stop. Just stop. Put your focus on the things that you do want, the things that you know are true. In religious science, we have what we used to call the 7 ups. It was peace, power, love, joy, beauty, wisdom. I don't know if that's all of them. But you put your focus on the attributes of source, energy, peace, power, love, joy, beauty, wisdom, wholeness, and you can add others to it. That's where you put your time and your attention on ideas that are of God, of truth. If you put your time and energy on what I'll call is the lie is that you're something less than wonderful. See, everybody here are greater than you realize. You're an individualization of God life. You're the whole bit, as we say often, from Raymond Charles Barker. But the thing is, we don't feel like we are. We have an inner dialogue that tells us that there's something wrong with us and there's something missing. But what we teach you here in this class and on Sunday is that you are one with the one. You are an individualization of source. The deep at the center of your being is this incredible, abundant, wonderful creative life. And to the extent that you access it, it can take you anywhere you want to go. So you have it all at your disposal. So in terms of this discussion, taking the positive approach versus the negative approach, Louise would ask the question, with all this negativity, did it ever bring you anything you ever wanted? I mean, maybe you get to be right. I don't know what the payoff is with the negative thinking. Fighting the negativity, she said, is a waste of time. I mean, if you want to make lasting changes in your life, she says, fighting it's a waste of time. The point is, the more you dwell on what you don't want, the more of it you're going to create. So the things about yourself or your life that you have always disliked are probably still buried beneath a little bit. Again, remember what you put your attention on grows and becomes permanent in your life. So we have an expression I've been hearing for some 30 years, which is look away from conditions. Don't put your time and attention on the negative stuff. And don't program your mind with it. Don't hang out with it. You can excuse yourself from any room. You can change any thought. You have the power to change your thinking, change your life. You have the problem to associate with those you want to associate with. You have the power to commune with great thinkers, great minds in this day and age. There's hundreds of different ways. I could talk to you about it all afternoon. But you have tremendous power. So the suggestion in this class is to move away from the negatives and put your attention on what it is that you really do want to have happen in your life. Keep shifting the discussion, or what they today call the narrative, even when it doesn't make sense. Okay, so we're going through a time right now with the economy. Everybody knows that. So a lot of people are reacting to that. Jimmy mentioned in another class this week from a lesson from Dr. Bill in Fort Lauderdale. They're still talking about him decades later. He put right on the marquee, We heard there's a recession, and he said, we're not participating. So, and I was in those classes in those years, and he was teaching us about how to be prosperous, to start giving if we wanted to gain prosperity. Don't put your attention to what the world is talking about, like increasing prices and all the stuff that people are all caught up with. What we do here is we create a different reality, and as you believe what you're thinking, you will create the opening in mind to draw that to you. So we want to keep shifting our mentality, keep changing the narrative. We want to see the good, even when there doesn't look like there's any good there. I was taught a long time ago I could see peace instead of anything. So if I'm in a hellish situation and you're in a relationship and there's issues, and you've got maybe some things going on with your health, the training here is I could see good instead of this. I could see what health I possess instead of it. If I'm approaching my health from what's missing or how it's not perfect, that's not going to help me. It will help me more if I'm living an affirmative life and I'm going to be talking about the health that I do have. And I'm going to find a way to see the positive if I'm committed to this type of living. Challenge yourself, she said, to see the good even when it doesn't look like there's any there. The next section is let's turn the negative affirmations, the negative statements that were just mentioned, into some positive and empowering statements. So regarding, I guess it's not my body, but somebody's body. I am slender. I'm filled with vitality. I think that's true. I'm prosperous. I am at the perfect place. I'm eternally young. I now move to a better place. These are things anybody could say to yourself. I have a wonderful relationship. I am my own person. I'm a center of God activity. And then the mirror again. I love myself. I love my hair. I love my nose. I love my body. I am filled with love and affection. I am joyous, happy and free. I am totally healthy. So regarding affirmations, what they are is they're statements we put into mind, and you may not entirely believe them right away, but you start using them and you start to build up consciousness, your consciousness around them. I used to years ago say I'm supplied and supported. I still say that. This is decades later. I'm supplied and supported because that's always true, and it's always one of the first ones that I will think of. Another one, perfect place, perfect time, all the time. That would be a great one for any of us, to always say it's the perfect place, perfect time, and all the time. Another that I used to use probably for a decade is whatever it is, I would say this is God in my life. So that I could be going through hirings and firings, and it could be going through relationships, ups and downs. This is God in my life. So what happens is when you start to understand that everything's perfect, which was another one I used to use, everything is perfect, and you look at yourself, you might even start to laugh. You say, well, how can this be perfect? It's perfect because life is unfolding perfectly all the time. Life is perfectly responding to what you realize, what you know, what your consciousness is. Louise taught that we're each 100% responsible for our lives. So did Ernest Holmes, and so has every other great teacher. In other words, the circumstances in your life didn't just happen. You are the author of your own life. You are the author of your own experiences. And you might say, I have a sister who will say this, well, I don't have anything to do with this. The sister always will say that. See, and I'm not going to try to convert her to anything, of course. She doesn't want to be responsible for anything. She just wants to think everybody's done everything to her. And how's that work out? That's all I can say to other books from throughout my life. I am not a victim of the world I see. See, this teaching teaches you not to be a victim of anything, because you will say, I'm caused to my own experience. Well, if I'm caused to my own experience, then I can't be a victim of anything. It means what I've done is I've drawn all things to me. I'm writing, you're the author, right, of your own experience. So you are creating your life. Louise would have said we're each responsible, and that's what she's talking about. She never had any notion that anybody's to blame for anything. And you all know that she taught one of these famous lines that each of us, that everyone's doing the best they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. So if you want to think of it metaphysically, the whole world is evolving, and every one of us is growing. We're all in a different place, but we're in the perfect place. So with that awareness, we don't really have much to say about anybody else, because they are what? Perfect place, perfect time, all the time. See, if you can just relieve yourself of the burden right there of having an opinion about what other people are doing and work on loving yourself, you're going to be free of so much stuff. People have argued with me over the years, well, they must know, they have to know. And I said, that's none of your spiritual business, honestly. Terry Cole Whitaker, I don't know much about the book, I can't remember, but she had a great title, which was, What You Think of Me Is None of My Business. So what we do in this teaching and with Louise Hayes, we work on loving ourselves, and we work on seeing the good. And that's really the job of a mystic, that's the job of a truth student, is to see the good. When? Always. In what moments? Every moment. Edwina Gaines was a great teacher of mine. Some of you know her. She's a prosperity teacher. She's quite funny and wonderful. And she would use the word God and good interchangeably. And she says, I want to see the good in the God and the good, the good in the God, because she said that's all that we're seeing. We're metaphysicians, so we understand that we live, we move, we have our being in this divine energy. So really, what's out there? God, energy. What's in here? The same energy. We live, we move, we have our being in it. So we want to learn to wake up, to love, accept, and approve of ourselves, and realize that the universe doesn't make junk, that each of us are whole and complete and divine and wonderful. So let's take the positive approach and start turning a lot of our conversations around and start seeing the good in the God. When I was younger, I think I was in my 20s, that's a long time ago, I used to talk about my problems a lot, and as I was putting my notes together, some of you have heard this story before. My father was better when I was an adult. He was a great coach, and I would call him each morning, and he would say things to me like, Greg, the universe is giving you green lights. Completely. It's entirely up to you was my mother's phrase, but his was the universe gives you green lights. And he said, nothing and no one is holding you back. So if somebody's telling you the universe is giving you green lights and stuff, you have a tendency to call that person back, because he was a great champion and coach. And when I would call him each day, after a while, he was pretty smart also. He would head me off at the pass and he would say, good morning, Greg. What exciting challenges do you have today? Because he was trying to have the same thing I do with these classes. You're trying to have people start to think about it in a different way. Because in those days I had problems and I was griping a lot. So he started to have me understand that I had all these things going on were exciting challenges. And I really started to get that message. He also got me reading Napoleon Hill when I was younger, and Think and Grow Rich, and all these wonderful ideas when I was probably 10, 12 years old. So I remember him stopping me again. What exciting challenges do you have going on? So before I ever heard of Louise Hay or Ernest Holmes, I was learning to take the positive approach in life. And this is really what Louise is teaching in this lesson. Affirmations, by the way, can be any statement that you make up yourself. the ones that are probably going to be most powerful, you can use mine or anyone else's, but the ones that are going to be most powerful are going to be the ones probably that you make up yourself that will address your own particular situation. Far too often, many of us think in a negative way, and we use a lot of shoulds, and those of you who are all devoted to Louise Hay know that she thinks the word should is the absolute worst word in the English language. It ought, here I'm going to say should, it ought to be thrown in the garbage heap, never to be used. And she would suggest start using the word could instead and stop telling people what to do. You don't like having it done to you. It also it's indicative of patterns of control. So I offer that to you. Negative affirmations, Louise Hay said, only create more of what you don't want. So it's really good to start turning those conversations around. Don't talk about your problems, talk about your exciting challenges. Don't talk about, when you have that going on, find a way to turn it around. It's worth every bit of effort. She said, if you're saying I hate my job, it's going to get you nowhere. It would be far better for you to start saying, I now accept a wonderful new job, even if you don't have it. I now accept a wonderful new job, because that second statement will open up channels in your consciousness for a new job to show up. Continually, this is the practice, this is the work that we do, continually make positive statements about how you'd like your life to be. However, there's an important point. It's very important. Always make your statement in the present tense, okay? In other words, don't say I want this and I want that. It's much better to say, I have this, I am this, I know this, I realize this. Do your affirmative prayers, your affirmations in the present tense. I already mentioned negative affirmations only create more of what you don't want. If you keep saying, I hate this or I hate that, it'll take you no place you want to go. So declarations that are positive, her examples are, I now accept a wonderful new job, I now accept a wonderful new partner, I now accept a wonderful, whatever it is. Put it out there. Dream big. Take the positive approach. The universe is not holding back on anything. Yesterday ended last night, you might say, but all my life it's been this way. You don't understand. See, this is the thing. For many times in my life, I've heard you don't understand. I could be very wealthy. Because that's what people say. They want to get me hooked into the story. And I'll listen. But I'll keep on listening. It's not going to change my mind. But the story is the story. I want to let go of the stories, because the stories just hold you back, right? Because the truth of us, each of us, is that we're whole and we're complete, and we're an inlet and outlet of God activity. The universe is really there waiting for us to discover that the kingdom's at hand, it's within us, it's there for us. And as big as you can dream and imagine and know and feel and sense that, you're going to have it. So it's about waking up to how great you are and learning to manifest and learning how to use the power that's yours to use. So we want to continually be learning to make positive statements. We want to use the present tense. Your subconscious mind, I'm reminded to say, is a totally obedient servant. So if you're going to declare things in the present tense, you're going to put things into motion. If you're going to declare, I'm loving and lovable now, and I have, what was that, a wonderful new job and a great relationship now, you're going to have it. If you declare anything is in the future tense, like I want this to happen or I will have it, then that's where the idea is going to always stay, just a little bit out of your reach, because it'll always be in the future. Regarding the process of loving yourself, as I've stated before, no matter what the problem is, this comes from Louise directly. No matter what the problem is, the main issue to work on, she said, is always going to be loving the self. I think that's true. No matter what the problem is, Louise said the main issue to work on is loving the self. So it's not about problem solving out there, because many of us are very good at that, right? All you problem solvers. She said no matter what the problem is, the main issue is to work on loving yourself. This is the magic wand that dissolves problems. People don't always like this answer because a lot of people have a need, right, to stay in the problem. And that's really unfortunate. I can think of people in my own family. You can tell them they're supplied and supported. You can really, say this is going to work out. Everything's good. You're whole and complete. But it's like water off a, they just don't hear it. Okay. And for people like that, a teaching like this is not really the right one for them just yet. People don't always like the answer. Loving yourself, Louise said, no matter what the problem is, it comes right back to loving yourself. She said the thing to do is love yourself more and more. And if you're really loving yourself, you're going to find a way to let go of the need to be right. You're going to find a way to let go of the need to have everything be fair. You're going to find a way to let go of the need to get back at people. You're going to find a way to let go of a lot of things when you're really loving yourself. Increasingly, you're going to see more peace and more joy in your life because you're letting go. You're letting God. Life is too short for all this kind of drama that people put themselves in. They're not enjoying their life because they're reacting to everything on earth when you could be seeing what? Peace and joy. And by knowing you have, love and you're supplied and supported, you just are a magnet to them. You don't have to struggle. I'm fond of an author who wrote a book, Life Was Not Meant to Be a Struggle. It doesn't have to be, but it is for most people. If you learn to lift your consciousness up higher and higher, the struggle becomes less and less because you're just not interested in doing all that other stuff. You're not out there, as Jimmy would say, in the world of reaction. He's always talking about that's the way most of the world lives. It's in reaction to what everybody's in reaction to something else. But as you come into a teaching like this, you understand that, okay, you're an individualization of God life yourself. That means you get to create life. You get to create life the way you want it to be. You don't have to react to people. Just because someone makes a nasty statement, you don't have to respond to it. I learned that lesson at some point in my life. It's like I used to think they had to give me hooks. And I don't have to chomp onto every hook. I could just let it lay. Let it lay. I can see peace instead of it. I can be smarter than that. As you learn to practice the teaching and get your thoughts, start living the affirmative life and release the negatives, increasingly you're going to see more peace, to have more joy, probably better health, and you'll demonstrate things very quickly. Remember the times in your life where you felt really good about yourself, Louise said in this segment. Most of us have a time where in our life, if you think about it, and how well you felt during that time. Or she said you might remember a time where you were in love, and for those periods you seemed to have no problems. She said, well, loving yourself is going to bring such a surge of good feeling and good fortune to you that you're going to feel like you're dancing on air. Loving yourself makes you feel really good. It's impossible to really love yourself unless you have developed self-acceptance and self-approval. That could be a whole lesson on its own, so I'm probably going to stop somewhere around here. This is something I've had classes on for decades. Self-acceptance and self-approval, she said, in the now, are the keys to all positive changes. So you might sit with yourself tonight and ask yourself, do I accept myself the way I am? Do I love myself the way I am? In what ways do I criticize myself? Where am I being critical? Where am I using the word should? Where am I minding other people's business? Where am I doing any of that stuff? Again, it's impossible to really love yourself unless you've developed self-acceptance and self-approval. Her answer to all of our problems is loving yourself more. And she said, when you really, really love yourself, everything in your life begins to work. So we don't mind other people's business. The work we do always, see, here's the thing, most of the good ministers would always say, we do our work on ourselves. I have one of the older ladies, lifelong student. I ask her, how are you? And she always says, wonderful, just like you. And then she would tell me she's working on herself, and I don't know how old she is, but she's up there in age, and anybody who's a real truth student is really focused on their own self-development and self-awareness. And that doesn't mean they don't care about other people. Quite the opposite. They're probably doing more for people because of who they've become. So I'll give you just a little bit more from this. It's impossible to really love yourself again unless you've developed self-acceptance and self-approval. And if you don't have it yet, then work toward it. Okay, work towards liking yourself if you don't love yourself. Do it by degree. Start using affirmations. As you start using affirmations, you're going to start seeing things demonstrate. Notice yourself where you're being critical. Wherever you're negative about your weight, your height, your eyebrows, your physical, whatever it is, just stop yourself mid-sentence. You hear me do my drama, stop in the name of love. Just stop. Some people say, but I've been criticizing myself all my life, I don't think I can do it. And others have said, I have all these tendencies and it's just too much. Just begin wherever you are. The next section she got into was training the mind, and what that section's all about is stopping the self-criticism. She maintained that most of us have been being critical of ourselves since we're little boys and little girls, and it's caused us to be resistant to change. And you come into a teaching like this, we're going to challenge you on all that stuff. We're going to say you were meant to be somebody, and you were meant to be great, and you were an individualization of God life. That means you're 1 in a billion. You're like the whole bit that Barker talked about, and we want you to, whenever you have these self-defeating thoughts come in, cancel them out, release them, neutralize them, work with them till you get rid of them, so you can get on to the important work at hand, which is creating an absolutely fabulous life, because that's what you're here to do. You're here to grow and evolve and to express yourself in amazing ways.